All right. Residual pressure is the amount of pressure that's left in the water system after the water is flowing. All right. So what we're showing on this slide here is on the left-hand side, we have 60 psi coming into the water system. And where it's discharging with the water flowing, we're left with 24 psi. What they're trying to say in this slide is it doesn't matter the order of flow. If I go big pipe, little pipe, little pipe, big pipe, none of that matters. It all totals out and equals out wherever it is at the final run, and that's going to be our friction loss. I want you to remember the term residual pressure and static pressure. Static pressure is at rest. So with these pipes, if the water was not flowing, it would be 60 on the left and 60 on the right. But with the water flowing, and we have, 36 psi friction loss, we're going to end up with 60 going in and 24 coming out. So residual, the amount of pressure that's left with the water flowing. Static, the amount of pressure that's present without the water flowing. Elbows, friction loss, obviously the more bends and stuff that we put into the pipe, the more friction loss that it's going to be. I think this is more of a common sense. There is no science to it. I don't know anybody who does the old loop-de-doop with the plumbing. I know I would, but, I'm kind of weird when it comes to that stuff. Galvanized pipes, they pretty much have a lifespan of about 60 years. And it's been roughly about 70 years since we started putting these things in. Now, there's a lot of people that will still replace with galvanized pipe. All right, so it still gets removed and put back in. And it's there. And I had I found a lot of home inspectors also are landlords, and they keep up with fire loss with the size of pipe. That may be. Those numbers are not exact on there. And just for anybody else, let me pop up what Mark put on here. He was saying that he thinks that there's an error with the friction loss with the size of the pipe. That may be true. I'm never afraid to make shit up. Pardon my language. But yeah, I'm never afraid to make up a number just to prove a point. All right. So I'm not worried about being accurate on the length and the friction loss and what's going to happen with it. The point I was trying to make is whether you go from a small pipe to a big pipe, the amount of friction loss is still going to be the same at the end result. It doesn't matter the order of the flow, is the point I was trying to make. Going back to the galvanized pipe, though. So, Les, and I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but it doesn't matter. I remember he has a lot of older buildings that have a lot of galvanized pipe in it. And he would actually insert air into these pipes, and he would have a pressure tank, hook it up to one of the spigots on there, and he would leave the water running, and then he would just turn the pressure tank on and off real fast, and basically creating a bunch of water hammers inside the pipe, trying to knock a whole bunch of this stuff loose, right? And from what he tells me, it works. The pressure would go down, and then he would go ahead and bang these things up a lot, and then it would free up, and everybody would be happy for a while. But as far as I'm concerned, my clients aren't going to be doing stuff like that, and I can't encourage them to do it. So we're going to run the water. We're going to look at that functional flow. We're going to give them the lifespan of the galvanized pipe, and if it's present, we're going to prepare them that some of these pipes might need to be replaced. I have found from experience that the hot water pipes do corrode up faster than the cold water pipes, which explains why the hot water lines will shut down first before the cold water lines do. I've also seen where people have taken where the pipes go horizontal and then they turn upwards, that little elbow right in there. I've seen where they've taken that off, cut it here and here, and that was just caked up, filled with a lot of debris because it kept falling right there. And they replaced that section, and that would give them another 10 to 20 years out of their plumbing pipes. Galvanized pipes, though, what I want you to take out of this slide is that they corrode from the inside, and it's kind of like having a heart attack. Everything just closes up on the inside until the water can't flow anymore. This is more or less of a kind of a joke as it comes in there, but this we actually did fine. So it was a galvanized plumbing system coming in there, and somebody decided to use electrical tape for instead of Teflon tape or dope, and surprisingly it didn't leak. So maybe that is something that can work. Who knows? All right. So these are going to be test questions. You do need to know these items here. So, any water pressure on a supply system between 20 and 80 is considered acceptable. In our area, 40 to 70 is what's kind of normal. Anything under 20, you're going to need a pump. Anything over 80, you're going to need some sort of pressure reducing device. Now that 80 psi, the pipes are designed for, I don't know the exact number, I want to say like almost up to 300 psi. They're pretty strong. But the 80 psi is when we start getting into the valves for dishwashers, washing machines, things that are automated that turn on and off. That's where it comes into play on that. All right. So this one here is what we're showing is over 80 psi. The device, as we come in, this water's coming in from the right, and it goes up to our shutoff valve. Then it goes into our pressure reducing device, and then we're going to have a pressure relief valve right after that. Sometimes the pressure reducing device and the pressure relief valve are actually built into the same thing, and then our water meter, and of course we're jumping over our water meter, pressure reducing device, pressure relief valve, just in case those have to be reduced. We're going to maintain ground and the same potential on both sides of those items where it's getting done. And the main purpose that we're bringing it down is, again, for those valves so that we don't damage them. Lower PSI, we're going to put a pump on it. So we're going to talk about well pumps as well in a little bit. We actually run them. We watch the gauge. We see how long it takes the gauge to drain down as the water is flowing and how long it takes the pump or the tank to fill back up. When these tanks get waterlogged and we don't have that much air pressure in them, then it ends up going on and off really quick, and there's not much we could do with that. We're going to either have to put a new tank in or add air to the tank if it doesn't have a bladder in it. So here's our initial setup. Water comes in from our well pumps it into our bladder tank, and everything works from there. So now the water's in the tank, we use it, we activate our pump, and you can see we're at 40 psi. The pump turns on, fills up our tank, builds up that pressure, gets to 50 psi, everything turns off, water flows, pressure drops, pump turns on, and that cycle just keeps going. Well systems. This is a test question that I am aware of. There is a line in the sand. They do want you to know the difference between a deep well and a shallow well. All right, and that line in the sand is 25 feet. Shallow wells are typically going to be, if you ever been to the forest preserve and they have those wells that you're going to pump up, those are shallow wells. You're typically going to have a surface pump that's going to create a draft and siphon that water out of the well in order to make it work. Very rarely are they going to be lined in any which way. They may have a stone liner, but they're going to be gapped and open, and the water table is just going to be that high that we're going to get water out of it. Deep wells are going to either be drilled, most likely. They may be bored, but usually they're going to end up being drilled. Again, anything over 25 feet is considered a deep well. Around here, they tend to go around 50 feet, and I've heard them as deep as 500. Once the well is done and the pipes are there, they're going to actually insert the pump into the into the well, and they're going to drop it all the way down so it actually sits in the water. And we're going to talk about a centrifugal pump versus a piston pump. Shallow wells, when we're pulling water out of it, that has to be more of a piston or a primer type pump. Where deep wells, we can use a centrifugal pump, so it actually pushes the water. It doesn't actually draw the water out. And I'm going to wait till I get those drawings up to try and explain that one. So dug wells, usually less than 25 feet. Bored wells, less than 100. Drill wells, here they're saying they go all the way up to 900 feet. I'm not aware of anything that deep, but I'm not saying it won't happen either. All right. We don't do too many drawdown tests in the state of Illinois, at least on the sales contracts up here. Anybody who does a well and septic certification or a well and septic inspection, that's usually mandated to be done by the seller of a home. And they have to provide that certificate from the well and septic guy to say everything's okay. So what they're going to do is measure the water level when it's at rest. Then they're going to be, I forgot exactly how much it is. I want to say it's like 5 gallons of water. And they want to see how long it takes to fill up a 5-gallon bucket. They're also going to measure to see how far down the water level dropped during that time frame. And then they're going to also measure the time frame it takes for that water level to come back up. Again, that's a drawdown test. I've never done one of these. I have had people ask me to inspect a well and the system or in the septic system. And all I could do is tell them is that, yeah, someone else is going to come and do it as well. We're going to operate this system, but that's really about it. I'm not going to be able to tell if they'll ever run out of water or the well will go dry. All right. Clearances, these numbers that are up here now are strictly for the test, per se. They're going to be strictly for the test. In the real world, we're going to be looking at pretty much 75 feet or more when it comes to stuff. At least it is in our area. So if the well has a steel liner on it or some sort of casing on it so that it's not open, I was talking about the dug wells before where they had stones stacked around them. If it's that type of well, then that has to be 100 feet away from the septic system. Obviously, it's easy for the wastewater to flow over and get in there. But if there is a liner on it or a casing on it, then it says you could be within 50 feet. Typically, what we find on our separations is they're going to put the well in the front of the house and they'll put the septic field in the back of the house. But depending on the layout of the house and the land, it might be reversed or it might be on the left and the right. They tend to leave a pretty decent separation. The magic number around here seems to be 75 feet, even though everything is typically having a casing on it, so they are typically lined, but everybody just wants to keep a general number when it comes to it. So, all right, pump components. I think we kind of chatted on this already. We're going to have our pump, our pressure gauge, our tank as well, the on-off switch that comes there, an isolation valve, and usually some sort of pressure relief valve. And not too often do we do that. Pretty much the only pressure relief valve we're going to find is going to be on the water heater itself. The only time we see pressure relief valves is when there's either a backflow prevention device or some sort of pressure reducing device. And then we'll see it built into that. Short cycling, I kind of mentioned this earlier. The only water is not compressible. We can increase the pressure on it, but we can't compress it. So we can only compress air. And so as we fill it up with water, we have to have some air inside the tank as well, so that we can keep and maintain that pressure. If I didn't have any air and the pump was running, the pump was shut off after about 2 seconds because it would increase the pressure instantly. And then when the water was turned on, it would drop instantly. And now the pump is the only thing that's kicking on. And we're going to feel that when the water, it'll get strong, weak, strong, weak. It'll be kind of weird when it runs. So we want to have air inside the tank. That's going to be our bumper, and that's going to keep everything nice and even.